Hi, guys. Welcome to Real Food Recovery. We have what I think is a really interesting topic to get today, and even more interesting is our lovely Shay is with us. For those of you that are familiar with Shay, she is part of our Real Food Recovery team. She is a certified health and life coach, niching in habit and behavior change, a root cause trauma informed coach with a particular focus on nervous system health, and a certified functional nutrition counselor approaching the person holistically. She loves helping people, and anybody that knows her knows that that is true. And she especially loves helping them become who they're uniquely and originally created to be, healthy and thriving physically, emotionally, and mentally. So we are going to dig into a powerful truth today, and that is the concept that all transformation happens in community, or does it? So Shay and I will be discussing that. And before I go any further, Shay, how you doing?
Hey, 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 so good to be here, all the way
Good.
from South Africa.
That's right. She's from South Africa. So, getting further into this discussion, we've both wrestled with food, isolation, and shame, but something shifted when we found a space to heal with others. So, we're going to share our stories, some listener questions, and why connection might be the most underrated tool in food recover in re- in food recovery. I'm going to start by sharing that I always went at it alone because what was I going to do? Tell someone about what I was experiencing? Heck no, I would have rather died than shared what was really going on at home. Not to mention, I didn't even have the verbiage for it. If I had wanted to share with people, I wouldn't have had a clue what to say. Plus, my thinking at the time was that it would have been embarrassing to admit the amount of sugar I was consuming. Sugar really was my main drug of choice, nothing else. And how I couldn't stop once I started, even though I was in physical and emotional distress. So, yes, my start into trying to solve what I didn't even understand was all on my own. And I honestly just thought, truly, I just thought it was a willpower problem or a food problem, like I was on the wrong diet. And so I kept searching for that shiny penny of, okay, I'll try. Well, this diet will work. Well, this diet will work. So, Shay, when you first started to recognize that you had a problem, did you jump right into community or were you on this solo mission as well?
Yeah, so beautiful. And I love that you're bringing this real and raw topic in, Paige, because I think this is something that millions are questioning.
Yes.
For me, I came, those that have heard, listeners that have heard my story before. So I came from a multiple addiction background. And many of the places that I found myself part of, whether it was, societal places or wherever I was, we're very much a go, go, go place. There was like no room for struggle at all. There was this attitude that, you had to achieve and you had to do and you had to perform. So I grew up learning that high achievement was the way to get anywhere in life. Okay. Now, how does that fit into the context of addiction? We need to look at some of the nature of addiction: shame, blame, and isolation. Anyone that has struggled with any kind of addiction understands that feeling of shame, blame, and isolation. And although I didn't directly believe that I had to do it alone, because of the shame and the stigma attached to any addiction, I didn't feel safe to share vulnerably
Sure.
that I was struggling because I wasn't modeled in any of those places how to walk vulnerably from a young age. I learned that I had to go it alone. So, that just became my automatic. And there's so much trauma that is attached to sharing feelings of vulnerability or addiction. It's kind of wired into us that it's a failure, and you're wired that you've got to just push through and plow through. So yeah, I learned it from that perspective, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I agree with that and I identify with that, and that makes perfect sense. So, moving further into this topic, I want to talk for a minute about what loneliness feels like in food addiction because exactly of the point that you were making about that. And if we can use the word food addiction, or if you're more comfortable with the ultra processed food use disorder, feel free to substitute that in your mind if you hear us using the word food addiction. But I bring up this point because addiction often begins in isolation and it continues there because believe me, when I was pigging out on chocolate chip cookies, I wasn't doing that in front of other people. I remember so vividly being at the office, I would try to sneak like this second piece of dessert from the break room without anybody noticing as I tried to take the walk of shame back to my desk and turn invisible, like people couldn't see that big plate of ice cream cake hidden at my side. And by the way, what I really want to point out too, that second piece that I was sneaking was planned before I ever even took that first
Yeah.
bite of the first piece. I had thought about, I knew we were having dessert that day. So I
Mm,
knew about it before I ever even, got up that morning. So that second piece was planned
mhm,
from the minute my eyeballs opened that I already, it was a pre-con conclusion. I knew that was happening. I just had to figure out how to finagle the second one with the least amount of attention on me. So
mm,
some might say that recovery begins the moment someone says, me too. And as I've mentioned, I never really talked on a serious level about what I was experiencing with my sugar binges with my besties. I would just make light of it instead and go about it with that approach to see if it landed anywhere and laughingly say, oh, I just can't stop when I get started on that stuff. But in private, when those episodes would happen, I felt desperately alone. And I literally had no idea what was happening to me. It was terrifying. So complete despair is what I felt. I had no idea if anyone else in the universe was even experiencing this or if it was just me. I truly couldn't imagine anyone else could be practicing that way of living. It was so outrageous how the things that I was doing. And it honestly, I felt like I perceived that behavior as repulsive
yeah,
actions and
yeah,
eating past the point of being full till you're sick. And I remember thinking no intelligent, sane person would behave that way, so it must be me. And what's interesting is after the sugar binge, I could clearly say that was crazy. Why did you think that? But my brain
mm,
was clear. The dopamine was
yeah,
satisfied, and so I could think straight because I had
yeah,
blood
yeah,
flow to the lump frontal lobe. But when the deep craving was happening, I did not have access to that rational thought to think this through.
yeah,
This is crazy behavior. So of course I had no answer to those questions of why I was doing those crazy
yeah.
behaviors. Shay, did you feel like other people were doing the same behaviors as you, or did you feel like you were the only one out there to
Yeah,
drive to whether it was food or whatever behavior?
yeah, yeah.
Did you
I
feel
think,
alone in that?
yeah, such a good question. I think we can be the loneliest person in a crowd, can't we?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that can be the loneliest place on earth sometimes too. And I think you said something really key there, Paige, was I didn't understand what was going on.
Really?
uh, for
How
me,
could you?
apart, yeah, I think apart from those people, and we'll talk a little bit about this later, apart from the people that I was doing the same thing as, okay, that's a separate thing, but that's when you're in the behaviors. But when you're trying to recover from whatever the use disorder is, what I struggled most with, because of my high achievement background, or the messaging was that I felt like I was surrounded by people who all seemed to have it together.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
that just reinforced, like, because no one was talking about it and no one was
Right.
doing it in front of my eyes. So that just reinforced my belief and my sense of shame. Like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I just dot, dot, dot? And so another observation that I made from that, and I kind of lean into this now years later, was that so much of the focus in these kind of circles, the talk would be around the behaviors. So you'd hear people talking about this kind of thing or that, and they'd sort of, shame the behavior or how unacceptable the behavior was. But that was just all symptoms. They weren't talking about the why. They weren't talking about why the people were doing what they were doing. And so here I was, this lonely person that I knew that there was something deep going on inside. I couldn't understand why, yet I was so mortified by the behavior, and that held me back. And when, as a habit and behavior change coach, going to the why is what brings the freedom, because when we have the understanding and we talk
Mhm.
about it, that's where the freedom comes. So yeah, that for me was like, everyone's got it together. What is wrong with me?
Yep,
Yeah.
I know. That does not that does not
Mm-mm.
help us, does it?
No, not helpful in the least.
So let's talk a minute about the myth that most of us believe, and that is, at least in the beginning, that is that I should be able to do this on my own. I know I always thought that and really believed I just had a willpower problem. I mean, that just kept
Mm,
coming up, coming up, coming up.
yeah,
And because I was able to tackle everything else that had crossed my path, highly successful, just I could just accomplish anything, top of my game in every area of my life. I could control everywhere, major high achiever. So
yeah,
why should this be any different? Especially if it was just a case of me not working hard enough,
yeah,
was the
yeah.
messaging that just kept coming up. And
Hmm.
why I just haven't put my mind to it, or again, it's just the wrong diet. I need to do Weight Watchers again. I've tried that a couple times, but I need to go back to that. So did you
Hmm.
ever believe that too, that you should be able to just do this all on your own?
Yeah, oh, Paige, I think we're touching on some really critical
Big.
things here. And I think I might
Mhm.
step on a few toes, but I'm going to go for it. Maybe I'll dance.
I've got shoes
No,
on.
I'll say it with love. So there's some general statements that I'm going to make now. So disclaimer, general statements
Yeah,
incoming here. I think putting my behavior and habit change coach hat on, I think we have to look at culture. Okay.
sure.
So what is the culture that is kind of being endorsed and facilitated and grown that a lot of us are living in? Okay. And I think a culture has a lot to do with this, generally speaking, okay? And also, you said something key just now, we miss the fact that it's not a willpower issue. We it's actually why power and skill power that we need to be teaching people in society. And I think if the general messaging in society is one of drivenness, we both talk about having come from high achievement. If it's drivenness, if it's success, if it's competitiveness, and again, define success and define competitiveness, then
Hmm.
that is going to be this message that keeps coming up. For me, growing up, was the message was that failure isn't an option and that
Yeah,
it's go, 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 high achieve. And there's nothing wrong with healthy competition. If we look at the root word of competition, it's to spur one another along, it's to draw the goal out of one another. That is healthy. But when it becomes a them for themselves, all for yourself, you're on your own, when that mentality kicks in, it can then almost flip to the story of, well, you're on your own, you've got to do this on your own. And we've got to look at where this message is coming from. Like, what is the soil that is nourishing this symptom of you've got to do it on your own? Some cultures are great at community with beautiful value systems built on looking out for one another. Others just could stretch a little bit into that.
right.
So our systems are perfectly set up to produce the results that we're getting. So we've got to look at our systems as they were.
Yeah, love that. And further talking about community is once I discovered community, I started to see how my patterns and thinking began to change. I
Yeah.
found out that I had more power than I realized.
Yeah.
And
Come
I
on.
discovered tips, right? Tips and
Mhm.
tools to get me out of sticky situations that I would
Mhm.
have never come across on my own because I had the opportunity to try them out, report back to my group, and get this great feedback loop going that would help me make the next right move. I also felt a little bit of accountability, like someone was waiting to hear from me and wanted to share in my
Yeah.
latest conquest, almost like we were all in this together, one for all and all for one. Like if one person wins,
Yeah.
everyone wins.
Yes,
So
please.
yeah, do you feel like patterns change for you once you started sharing them out loud? Did it make an impact on your recovery journey? Did it affect your trajectory in any way, community?
Absolutely. Yeah, so good. Do you know, Paige, I think a community can be doing all kinds, but what's really powerful about a healing focused community is that you as an individual, I think this is somewhere, well, certainly for me, where my core needs were nourished, that who I am as a person was valued. Often if I put my trauma-informed training hat on, the behaviors that surround any addictive or use disorder of any sorts, they go back, way back to some form, generally speaking, some form of our core needs not being nourished or met or withheld, or something in the kind of foundations there. There's some sort of trauma of sorts separate to the addictive nature of these certain things. And when we're in a community, like when I found myself in the right communities, who are open, who are transparent, who are vulnerable, where you are
Mhm.
seen and you're heard and you're understood and you're validated and valued, this brings healing to the core of who you are. It brings
Right.
nourishment to your soul, to you as a person.
Mhm.
And I think that's what I really love here about the real food recovery community is it focuses on the individual, strengthening and nourishing and seeing the individual heal, um, not a one size fits all, which then beautifully nourishes and benefits the whole because we're stronger together. It's one
Right.
deep in love and kindness and compassion, as it were. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So let's talk about something that you've only been able to change because you had a support group or a recovery partner.
Mm.
I had my first win. I'll go first. I had my first win because of being in a support group. I don't know if I could have ever gotten to where I had this
Yeah.
first sugar-free experience if I had always stayed on my own. I'm really not sure. I'd like to say I could have gotten close, but I really don't know if I could have gotten as far as I've gotten. It catapulted me as
Yeah.
far as getting off sugar once I got into uh, a recovery group. So the encouragement as well as helping me literally lay out the plan, plus helping with having that a mind say that 3 times, mindset shift of I can do this because I'm going to execute this XYZ plan that we've laid out together with someone that's helping me, and having the insight to make this plan not only for this event that I was going to, that I was going to try for the
Yeah.
first time to be sugar free. I understood for the first time, you got to
Mm.
plan a little before, you got to plan during, and you got to plan after. It's not just, while you're at the party. I'm doing air quotes for those of you who can't see me. It's not just those 2 hours. There's a whole lot that goes into a successful event, especially in the beginning. Now I'm 4 years out. It's just who I am. So I don't have to do as much gymnastics to be successful. But I literally had someone telling me, write it down. Right. I want you to visualize what's going to happen. Write it down. Keep the
Mhm.
plan in the foremost part of
Mhm.
your brain
Yeah.
and lean
Yeah.
into support while you're there. If you have to go to the bathroom and text a friend, or
Yeah.
here's a few tricks, you're going to get up from the table and start washing the dishes while people are eating dessert. I had help to lay that out, and I knew
Yeah.
there was a whole room of people there mentally in that party with me, helping me do those steps.
Yeah.
So once I was successful that first time, I knew I could do it again. I had a system, I had a formula, and it was like the light bulbs went off. It's like the horse was out of the barn and took off on the racetrack, and I literally had a new lease on life. My life has been forever changed because of that first event. I was like 2 weeks into a recovery program, tried that, and I've never looked back. That was for over 4 years later. So it literally changed my life. And had I not been in that support group at that time, I might still be on in that diet loop cycle, right? Going from Weight Watchers to Jenny Craig to whatever, just or waiting to see what the new, water fast or whatever
Yeah.
the new crazy diet was about that time. Do you
Yeah.
have any pivotal moments in your life where a moment stood out for you that you had a success or a change while in
Yeah.
community that maybe couldn't have happened
Mm.
on your own?
Oh gosh, Paige, absolutely. I think, this is one of my key moments that I will look back on life and I just knew, one of a couple that I just knew. And actually, mine goes right back to my days where I first trained as a health and life coach. And I was injected into a community there where I had to, well, I didn't have to, air quotes, but I chose to be completely vulnerable because I knew that this was a big part of the calling that I believe that God had called me to do. And I
Mm-hmm.
needed to bring all the masks off. And I think for me, I had to become my first client, but rooted in a community who met regularly, where all the masks came off. Where what we did was we had to do deep transformative work about the unconscious beliefs that were driving my behaviors. So when in that community, as I would share the what's and the how's, in other words, the behaviors and the symptoms, we got to the whys that were being driven because of an unconscious, the behaviors are being driven by an unconscious belief system. And what I realized was it was a lack of a resourcing. It was a resourcing issue. I had a lack of comfort. My heart and my body and my soul had been exhausted for years trying to, that willpower thing, trying to
Yeah.
stop certain behaviors, etc., etc. But I hadn't gone through a process of understanding why I was doing what I was doing. That for me just set me completely free. Plus, all the science, I mean, I'm a bit of a science nerd, like with all the science and that kind of evidence, that we have. So in a totally safe, judgment-free curiosity space, I was able to get to those roots. And that, to this day and going forward, is how I will always work with others, whether it's our members or individuals in my own coaching practice. Yeah, in a community where the why is understood and uncovered. Yeah, game changer for me.
Yeah, that when you said that about trying to just force behavior change without understanding the why, force equals resistance, right? You,
Totally.
you
Yeah,
just cannot force
yeah,
change.
yeah,
That's we need to we need to go in a different direction,
yeah. Because if that was going to work, we'd all be healthy by now, wouldn't we?
right? Exactly, exactly. So here's a good way to look at this. Here's the big takeaway. Addiction begins in isolation. However, recovery begins in connection. So let's
Yeah.
talk for a minute about what community actually does for the recovery journey. Let's face it, it's more than just company. We're not just keeping company with one another. Community becomes this mirror. It reflects back your progress when you can't see it, and it holds up the truth gently when you're lying to yourself. And I love that approach of just a gentle going, oh, hold on
Yeah.
just a second. So I
Hmm.
remember the first time I was sharing something, some thought about feeling powerless, and someone in the group said, that is your food voice. That's not you. And I needed that reality check that that really wasn't coming from me. That was some other part of my brain that was sending those signals. So, and there were so many other science. I'm sciencey like you. So those science moments where everything just clicks,
Yeah.
they were things that I might not have thought of on my own. And I was exposed to so many more recovery insights, especially from others who had been at this way longer than me. And it helped so much watching others walking this path. So when you think about this, do you have any like big ahas when it comes to appreciating the benefits of community? What do you think community has done for you, if you could sum that up?
How long have we got, Paige?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'll try and do it quickly. I think it was Dr. Gabor Mate, I think it was him who said the opposite of addiction is connection.
Yeah.
And for me, oh, Paige, for me, this space and this place, it's a place of love, safety, belonging, those core needs being met. It's a place where the healthiest version of you is seen and drawn out, where the real enemy, not you, gets fought. Let's focus on who the real or what the real enemy is, and that's where we focus on that. It's where the science of what's going on in there helps you separate
Yes.
from the behaviors and dispel shame and blame. It's where you're truly able to be you, your unique, precious, valuable self, becoming your best version, a place of finding your way back to your heart.
Yeah.
Communitas, where there's shared struggles and wins, a place where honor of who you are is the currency and trust is nurtured. So
Yeah.
there's so much. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I could go on about it forever. Yeah.
I love what you said about bringing that point up about connection is the opposite of addiction, because I heard that maybe for a couple of years. And I'm like, I don't really know what they're talking
Yeah.
about because I was so independent minded
Oh,
of
yeah,
accomplishing goals, and I really didn't understand. I just am kind of a loner a little bit. It
sure.
really has been just the past few years that that's made more sense to me. But yeah, when we're able to
Yeah,
identify with others, just
yeah.
makes you feel so less alone in the
Oh,
world, and that
yeah.
it's just such a more compassionate place. So I'm curious to know
Mm,
from you if you think community felt like home right away to you, because you mentioned that a little bit about the vulnerability, and that's what I noticed too. I think it did that community did feel like home right away to me, because these were the most humble, like we said, vulnerable people I had ever met. I had never experienced
yeah,
anything like that before, and I admired how hard they were working on change. I mean, these people are working hard and leaving it all on the table and
yeah,
just spilling their guts out, saying, "This is the real raw feelings that I'm experiencing. I'm not holding back. I'm here to share that." So it
yeah,
allowed me to feel comfortable right away. It was a place I could feel safe
yeah,
sharing, and I had so much compassion for everyone who was suffering the same way I was, which is easy to do when people are being real, raw, and honest. It's instant connection. It
yeah.
literally is instant
It's
connection.
safe.
And I like the idea that everyone was sharing that borrowed hope with one another. Plus, I think
Mm,
community also shifts our identity, which you are a
mhm.
big proponent of. You stop seeing yourself as broken and start seeing yourself as this person in
Yeah.
process with other people in process. So yeah, it was easy to feel at home right away. Plus, I think support groups are just so welcoming. So what do you want to share what your experience was in that
Yeah. I
sense?
love that page. Yeah. I think the short answer, did I feel at home straight away? I would say probably yes and no. Yes, because suddenly it was a place of safety. It was a place where I wasn't the only one. It was a place where I could just be who I am as I am right now. No,
Mm-hmm.
because of the old stories in my head.
Yeah.
The
Mm-hmm.
old survival adaptation responses to isolate, keep quiet because something felt like it was under threat,
Yeah.
and if I share, then this is going to be lost or stolen, and it's where I learned to become, I know you alluded to it about the whole thing of identity, where I learned to become someone who dot 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 who is about this XYZ, it is that identity shift. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think we've got to give ourselves grace when we find ourselves in these places, that the old stories are going to come knocking loudly, and just to
Mhm.
understand. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that. And the other, when you just were talking, I also thought of when we're in community, when we're working on our identity, you get to hear other people's whys of why they're doing this,
Hmm.
and it just touches a chord deep inside. You're like, yeah, I wasn't able to verbalize that before, but now that you say that, I identify with that too. That's who I want to be. I want to do what you're doing there. And now I like your why, and I'm going to use that too and add it to my toolbox.
Yeah,
So just
and you can.
exposure. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. So I want to touch for a minute on how the diet industry and the processed food industry profit off of our failings, which
Mhm.
ironically, they are the ones who originally set this whole thing in motion. So if you think about all the commercials out there promoting processed food and how it highlights, I'm doing air quotes again, communities of people,
Yeah.
they're talking, they're laughing, and they're looking joyously connected with these platters of processed food, and everyone is always skinny and good looking. And all the while, the diet industry is promoting moderation. It's such a setup for failure and misery that everybody's eating pizza or fast food or candy bars without a care in the world. Everybody's just laughing and smiling. Nobody's on oxygen, taking insulin. Nobody's in a wheelchair. I mean, they're just all this beautiful group, happy as a clam. So I
Yeah.
remember when I first started Weight Watchers, and after my first meeting, I literally raced to the store because all I heard was, "Hey, Weight Watchers, we sell all these products at the store. They're just miniature size processed food treats, the fudge sickles and the cupcakes." And they expected me to weigh in front of everybody the next week after eating that Weight Watchers carrot cakes, like just that one little one I'm going to eat and just be totally over the moon. But I remember one time I had stopped at the store to resupply this stash of those single stick fudge sickles. And then I had to pick up my youngest daughter at middle school. Well, I get there to pick her up and she forgot a book inside. Well, as middle schoolers do, they go back in and they stay in and they see somebody they like and want to have a conversation. So she took a very long time. Chelsea, I remember that. So just so you know, I did not forget that moment if you're listening. And you know where this story's going, don't you?
Uh-huh.
That box of fudge sickles, I'm like, well, you know what? They're going to melt. I probably should at least eat one of them and get my money's worth out of at least one of them before the whole thing is a puddle. Well, before you know it, I had eaten the entire box because she was in there, middle school. Ugh, what are you going to do? But yeah, ate the entire box. And so the diet industry and the processed food industry totally sets us up for shame for not being able to moderate the immoderatable. That is a
Yeah.
word that I use often and is totally made up by me. It's not in the dictionary, but it says it clearly what it is.
Beautiful.
But it's diabolical how these foods were specifically designed to make us eat more. The bliss point. They use the
Yeah.
bliss point factor to create these things. So you literally you can't use that frontal lobe like I was talking about early to make rational decisions.
Mhm.
You're working off that addictive part of the brain. And it's infuriating because they are picking on the most vulnerable community there is, and they know it. And they
Yeah.
also know we're going to be back again and again and again. We are customers for life until we start the recovery process. So the food industry profits off the shame of, just try harder while consuming smaller amounts of processed food. But here's the truth. The ultra processed food use disorder hijacks the brain in a way that makes
Mhm.
isolation seem safer than
Yeah.
connection. And that isolation feeds the cycle. So the binges get hidden, the emotions get numb, and the longer you're alone in it, the harder it is to believe anyone could
Mm.
understand the things that you've been doing. So that's where community really pays off when you can be with others who say, me too. So I don't know if you want to share any thoughts on how the diet industry or the processed food industry capitalizes on isolation and how maybe in a sneaky way they want to discourage communities like ours at Real
Yeah.
Food Recovery from forming because that brings the effect of these foods. They put a big spotlight on this. And the last thing they want is for people to gather in
Yeah.
recovery groups. So do you have anything you want to share
Yeah,
about that?
absolutely. Yeah, so good, Paige. I think it's really, really, it's just awful and heartbreaking. I think
Yeah.
there's a blend of physiological and psychological stuff at play here. And it was done so intentionally. In fact, you mentioned it, and I'll give for our listeners just a little bit of a quick history lesson. I was actually going to mention the bliss point. So, for
Yeah.
those of you who don't know it, just very, very briefly, this is the perfect balance of sugar, salt, and fat that make foods irresistibly appealing. Okay. And this was actually discovered by food scientists back in the 70s and 80s. Researchers Victor Pike and Howard Moskowitz, they basically experimented to identify the optimal ingredient balance that maximizes consumer appeal. Okay. Now,
Hmm.
how that applies to the processed food industry is that the bliss point concept was applied to various food products, including snacks, beverages, and processed foods, to create, here it goes, highly palatable and addictive products. Okay,
Yep.
it was done intentionally. Moskowitz's work on the bliss point absolutely revolutionized the food industry. Okay, and it helped create highly, air quotes, successful products. All right. However,
For them.
many have argued, yeah, exactly. Many have argued that this actually has contributed to overconsumption, obesity, health issues, etc., because they directly engineer these foods to be overly
Yeah.
addictive. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's a real thing. And
Yeah.
what this has done is it's now given a quick resource. So if we look at a society that is speeding up, consumerism's on the rise, stress and environmental factors, societal breakdown. I mean, you've got a global health crisis on your hands, and
Right.
here's the solution in an advert.
Right.
So quick solution, and it's so unethical. I mean, Paige, I get
Oh,
very, riled up about it, but it's unethical to the core. But the good news is we're waking up. People are waking up.
oh, don't
And
you? I was going to say that when you
Mhm.
were finished talking, that just somebody sent me this morning a text about it. There's another news clip on the topic of the processed food industry. We're in probably the best position we've ever been in the United States to
Yeah,
start taking a look at this, and I'm very excited about the
yeah,
exposure as it should be.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
love that.
So,
So,
so
a
good.
good note to end on before listener questions is to bring out the fact that belonging and identity shift in a safe community I'm
Hmm.
sorry, belonging and identity shift in a safe
Yeah,
community. We borrow hope and clarity when we don't have it for ourselves. Shay often shares this line that I love, that beliefs form our identity form our behaviors, and our behaviors form our habits, with which I believe very deeply. And as we were working on this podcast, it occurred to me that community is often where those strong beliefs start forming,
yeah.
and we begin to look at ourselves in a different, more powerful ways. Do you want to give any feedback on that, Shay, before we finish up?
So good. I think we've all heard that quote that if you want to know who you're going to be and what you'll be doing in 5 years' time, look at those that you spend the most time with now.
Yeah,
That
I
can
love
seem
that.
such a cliche, but it's so true because why our mirror neurons kick in. But I think this is genuinely true for recovery as much as it is for the negative and the destructive stuff. It is the same for recovery and
Right?
healing and health and wellness. It's about
Mhm.
becoming someone who dot dot dot. This is all about identity, all about
Mhm.
identity. And so that's why I'm super cautious to label someone as an addict or an this, or I'll personally, for me, I would say use disorders or something, but I will
Mhm.
call myself I am so and so, and if it's been a while since I've walked in certain behaviors and I no longer do that, I'm not going to call myself that anymore because that's not who I
Mhm.
am. Otherwise, that
Mhm.
just
Oh, I
causes a
like
war
that.
within ourselves.
Mhm.
And who loses when we're at war with ourselves? We do. Who
Mhm.
wins when we do. So we've got to start identifying as someone, and that's what we get in a healing community. We identify
Mhm.
because our people are doing that. So being that person of tomorrow today, practicing that one behavior today, wiring it in, not just mantras, but wiring it in through action, which
Mhm.
gives your body a corrective experience, as it were. So,
I
yeah,
love that. Yeah, I love that. And I want to capitalize on what you said about how the people that you hang out with will determine where you are in 5 years. And I love that because we talk a lot about sickness is addiction. If everybody you're with is sick and doing behaviors that will make you more sick, you're going to end up there. But also health is
yeah,
addictive as well too. So if
yeah,
you surround yourself with all those
contagious.
people, yeah, I meant to say contagious. Thank you. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
contagious. The sickness is contagious, but also health is contagious. Thank you for that
absolutely.
correction. And I'm going to do better. I call myself a sugar addict, but it doesn't bother me. It doesn't cause me shame
Sure.
because it gives me guardrails. So maybe I will start looking at labeling myself as someone who can't just eat one cookie. I
There we
don't know.
go. I am someone who says no to cookies.
Okay, there. That's good. That's perfection. And so true.
Because you do.
Yeah. So if you're listening today and trying to white knuckle recovery on your own, we get it. We've been there, but there's another way. There's a space where you don't have to hide, where your struggle doesn't disqualify you, it connects you. We hope today has reminded you that you are not weak for needing others. You're human. And healing is a team sport. So if you're still trying to do this alone today, let today be your invitation
Yeah.
to check out Real Food Recovery. We're just waiting for you to join us. You don't have to bear everything. Just start small. Even showing up silently in a group is brave. So transformation begins at that point, and we hope to see you there. You belong, and recovery is possible, especially
Mm.
in our community. So Do you have anything else you want to say before we hop into listener questions?
No, all good from my side, Paige. Absolutely. I
Wonderful.
think it's just an encouraging topic, and I think our listeners are going to get a lot from this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Mm,
we've got 6 listener questions. I will start out. One of the things that someone asked is, can online communities really work? So yes, 100% yes. And I found my first recovery group online, and I've never met any of them in person, but they held me through some of those darkest moments when I first started. And the key wasn't whether it was online or in person, it's whether you feel safe, whether you feel
yeah.
safe, seen, and supported. So that's really the key if you are someone who is looking for an online support group.
Yeah, so good. I love that. In fact, that follows nicely onto this next listener question. And this is such an honest question. The question is, what if I don't trust people? I think, the number one key to healing is safety. And what's beautiful about this is it's where you have a felt sense and a corrective experience. If you've not felt any of that in your life, your
Yeah.
nervous system needs to feel that. We logically we can know it, but we got to feel it. But we got to give it
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
Trust is built in micro moments. We don't have to spill everything right away. We just need to show
Mhm.
up, let others speak, keep reminding yourself, that if you're trying to isolate, your brain's just trying to protect you. But
Yeah.
healing and transformation happens in community, and there's
Mhm.
often when we're healing from food or alcohol or drugs or whatever it is in this context, we're talking about food. Often healing from that means healing a people story too.
Yeah.
And that's
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
So we heal with people. If we've been hurt
Mhm.
by people, we heal with people.
Yeah. Oh, good point. Excellent. I love that. So the next one is, how do I find the right group for me, building on the last couple of questions? So look for shared values, not just shared struggles. A
Mm,
group where people talk about what you want, not just what you're trying to quit. So if your vision is recovery and that includes joy, aliveness, and peace, then find a circle that speaks that language. So
mm.
that would be my advice for someone that is looking for the right group. You should know what you'll know. I mean, your chest, inside your chest, will tell you if it sounds right. It'll just land right inside your chest, your gut, your head.
Yeah, so good. I love that. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so next question we have is, can a book, a podcast, or a therapist count as community? Okay, so these can be helpful, all right, in rewiring, that neuroplasticity that's required in recovery and healing. But they're often additions, they're not substitutes. I'm always one for saying, yes, do read, do
Mhm.
listen, do watch. However,
Mhm.
I really firmly believe, and we've seen it over years, you need to be somewhere where you're known, not just informed, where you
Yeah.
can
Oh.
work out your journey. You can work
Mhm.
out your journey, but be witnessed, where you can be
Mhm.
validated. You can be told, hey, great, well done. We all want affirmation of sort. We're built for validation and referencing, and that's what we get there. So podcasts and books are great for insight, but
Yeah.
community is where we practice what we're learning with people who can respond and
Mhm.
speak into our life, as it were. So, yeah.
Okay, the next one is a really good one too, and I find it fascinating because I think everybody can suffer from this a little bit. And their question was, what do I do when I feel jealous or triggered by other people's success in recovery? That opens up this. Really, this is a great question because it does open up a conversation about comparison, emotional safety, and learning to celebrate others while honoring your own path, which I'm not saying that's easy, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm giving this answer, but by no means am I diminishing those real feelings.
Yeah.
I think we've all experienced that. I used to hear someone say, I've been off processed food for 90 days. And instead
Mm,
of celebrating, I might feel a little bit of shame, like, what's wrong with me? Why is it taking me this long? But it took time to realize that their story wasn't proof of my failure. It's just
mm,
evidence that recovery was possible. So I actually think that's one of our biggest growth measuring tools is when you can be in a group and celebrate and lift other people up for their success and not let it dim your light. So
Mm.
I think that is huge transformation in recovery. And
Yeah.
hopefully you can wish for those moments so you can practice
Yeah.
growth in that area.
So good. So good. That reminds me of our acts of service branch here at Real Food
Yeah.
Recovery. It's just leaning into others and cheering them on. It's beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful. Right. So the last question we've got, a great one, is I'm introverted. Do I really have to talk in a group to benefit? Short answer, no. You don't to benefit. Great, great, great question. I think we've got to remember, there's a difference between, if we're introverted, we've got to lean into what is our nervous system state in when we're coming in, into healing and recovery. What are the stories going on? And I know folk who have first joined recovery groups who didn't speak for weeks, and they just
Mhm.
came, they showed up, they were there, cameras off, and they just listened, maybe popped something in the chat.
Yeah.
But there's power in being a witness. This is all brain training. It's that, again, that rewiring,
Yes.
that neuroplasticity. Don't underestimate just coming and being, because what's happening again is your nervous system is having a felt experience. It's feeling belonging, it's feeling the safety, it's having a corrective experience. And that, my friends, leads us beautifully into freedom. It's when we rewrite the story that our whole being has not experienced. So we don't need to perform to belong, just be in the space, soak in the honesty, the courage, the compassion. All of this starts to change our inner story. And when you're ready, you speak. And I guarantee you, those are the people that we can't stop them from talking,
Yeah.
even if
Isn't that
we make
funny?
them.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are just the loudest and cheer on everyone the loudest as well, which is
Yeah.
beautiful.
It's so, isn't it exciting to see someone kind of
Mhm.
come alive and come into
So
themselves?
good. Yeah. Yeah.
Ah, thank you. This has been a great episode. I can't thank you enough for being with us, and we're excited to have Shay with us more often. She just brings so much to the community. She really is a pillar in our community. So thank you, thank you, thank you, madam. And with that, we will say goodbye. And if you want to find out more about us, you can find us at realfoodrecovery4u.com. That's the number 4 and the letter U. And if you want to find our book, Real Food Recovery, If Food Isn't the Answer, What's the Question? You can find that on Amazon. Thanks, guys. See you next time. Bye bye.